Hi everyone, I'm Si Gordon from Black and Gold Audio, and this is a short tutorial on how I went about creating my new Foley percussion pack for Bandlab. The story behind it, simply I just wanted to create a load of percussion loops made out of everyday Foley sounds. So anything internal in the house and external out and about on my travels. I've got a whole library's worth of stuff I've collected over the years, but I also kind of went out and also went around the house and recorded a load of material, cut them all up, edited them and put them together into Logic Pro and into the sampler. Used some other little tools which you'll see in a moment how I did it, and you know, produced 100 or so loops that can be used in varying compositions of your choice. Anything ranging, so all the tempos range from 80, 90 BPM up to 150. I've just done different percussive loops in all of those kind of ranges. So yeah, how do I go about it? So first off, grabbed all my recording gear, my Sennheiser MKH416 and my Zoom F6 field recorder, and went out and just started to kind of record loads and loads of different sounds, taking with me kind of knives, drumsticks, anything to tap on anything, and record a load of close mic'd sounds. Have a bit of a giggle with it. Once then, I've then brought everything back into the studio and started to kind of edit everything. Okay, so importing them into the sampler within Logic. So I've already saved you the pain of these sounds. I've already processed them, as you can hear. This is a batch of the sounds. I've recorded so many and and also sourced so many all ready to go. I'm going to use an instance of sampler within Logic. I'm going to use several of these obviously for different Foley batches. We're going to select all of the sounds from out of this Foley batch and grab them and take them across to the mapping area in Logic Sampler. Importing. Now these sounds have mapped themselves across 2 keys each for each sample. And we've also got 2 groups. Logic tends to have around about 25 samples per group, and then creates another group. So we're going to kind of change those in a moment and reorder them. You can also switch off the pitch control at the bottom. In this case, I found it's not really changing anything after I remap, which is about what we're going to do now. So we're going to go to the remapping function in Logic, and we're going to remap all of these notes. So Logic will sampler will automatically do this and just take them down to single keys. And we're going to do that in group 2 as well. And there we go. So they're both of those groups are now remapped. And what I essentially want to do now is look at where the next available key is. So yeah, we're going to look at that B2 key, and we're going to move that second group up to start on that B2 key. There we go. So now when we listen back to these samples, they should all play back quite nicely, and will where the first group will finish at B2, the second will start. I'm also listening to the length of the samples here now. because at the moment our envelope in the sampler is quite short, and I'm going to want some of the sounds to play a bit longer. Let's just go through and listen to some of these and find the right balance of an envelope setting, a release setting. The attack, I want them to sound straight away, so I'm going to leave that as is. Yeah, that's working. I think that will be a good general setting for all of the samples in this mapping here. Okay, I'm now going to go over and look at the mod matrix, and what I want to do is switch all of these mods off so that I'm having nothing modulate any of the sounds whatsoever across the whole board. The mapping board there, so that they are just playing normally. I'm not really going to affect these too much. I'm going to add a touch of reverb in a moment and a little bit of limiting, and that's about it. I want these as dry as possible so that you as producers can also then use them with your own, on your own. So I've now created a blank region for the sampler. I'm now going inside that region, and I'm going to add a note right across the full 4 bars of this region. And the reason being, you'll find out in a moment. Just make sure that's playing back all right. Turned it up to full velocity. And that's ready to go. So we're now going to add a basic effects chain. I'm going to throw a limiter on here just to catch any peaks that some of the sounds may throw out, because I've not equalized all of these sounds at the same volume. They are as recorded. They've just been cut up and processed, so the limiter is there just to catch any peaks within the files. I'm now going to throw a reverb on. That's really big. Let's change that and make it a bit smaller. I'm only wanting to have a little bit on this, just for a slight bit of ambience on the files. Add a little bit of a tail to some of the sounds. Let's even turn the space down as well. That's better. Okay, here's the fun part. Arpeggiator is what will create all of the rhythms for all this different Foley. So using the octaves and using the notes, we can kind of create really, really cool rhythms with this. So I'm going to now start to create my own grid here. All right, so over 16 steps, I'm going to add a load of notes in with some gaps, different velocity levels, as you see I'm changing right now. And let's then start to see if we can get this right and get a really good groove out of it. It takes a while, some patience. You can get some good grooves out of this. So I'm using some of my own here. I'm also going to use some of the default settings as well. Because some of the settings in the arpeggiator are great, especially for Foley percussion. So now I'm trying to play about with the rate, see if I can get some, see what the triplets and the dotted rhythms sound like. Eighths, quarter notes, sixteenths. I've also taken the octave range up, so you're now hearing not only the first note, the C0, but we're now hearing the C1 and the C2 because we've got it over 3 octaves, and that's what's creating that randomization. We've had a bit of variation in there now as well, and I'm also changed the note order, so how the arpeggiator moves up and down the octaves. That's getting something like it. Okay, we're going to move to some options and change some of the note lengths. We'll add a bit of randomization in there. So some of those arpeggiated notes will change their lengths, and we'll also change a little bit more of their velocity levels as well. We'll randomize some of those and even try out some swing. See if we can move those notes around a little bit more and create a better groove. Something else to play about with is the tempo. I'm going to drop this from 120 to 90. That's cool. I like that groove. Let's try it at 100. Okay, next up, we just bounce the groove. If we're happy with that rhythm, we're going to name it and then bounce that groove. And that's what we eventually I will continue to go through. So I'm going to name it something that it's going to title as, because I do render these out after I've done them all again and normalize all their volumes. But there we are. One example. A completed rhythm. And then I essentially going to move the notes up and then go back to it, go back to the ARP. So that now we shifted to the next sound in the map. And we can start to go through some of the factory settings as well and have a little play with those, see what they come out like. And then the process is repeated over and over again, moving the notes up and down, finding the right grooves, programming some. Yeah, it's a big old process, but it's fun. You know, we get some really cool grooves out of this. Here we are then. So a load of finished files. I've still got more to do. Give you a blast. And these are then nearly ready for processing, final processing. And I do that in Audition. We're going to use Audition to batch process. Mainly just to top and tail, fade in and fade outs. Here we are in Audition. All of the finished exported files, all 100 of them. Yeah, they're sounding great. I'm really happy with them. So all we do, select all, and we drag across into Adobe Audition, into our media browser window. And then we're going to open our batch process tab. Drag these across into the batch processing area. And we're going to check our exporting location, which in this case will be in our Foley Percussion folder. We'll create one. Here's the exported files at the moment out of Logic, but we'll now create a final folder. And this is what is supplied to Bandlab and will be available to you. Okay, so that's the location chosen. We're just checking any other settings here. Pretty much all of these default settings are good to go. We want to keep the file exactly the same as they were exported at 44.1 and 24 bits, so I'm really happy with that. But we're going to now pick off one of my presets I've made in Adobe Audition, which is the fade in and fade out, which is around 2 milliseconds of fade in and fade out. And I'm going to run it really quickly. I've applied all those files and we're done. So there you go. That's how I went about creating it. And now have a listen to this. Some of the percussion loops in amongst a composition idea. So there it is, a short video on how I went about creating my Foley Percussion sound pack for Bandlab. Hope you enjoyed it and got some great ideas out of it and learned some techniques along the way. Essentially, there are loads of different ways to do this with Foley sounds. The hardest part is obviously kind of cutting up and editing the sounds and getting them ready, but then the fun part, throwing them into that sampler and using those other techniques. With the arpeggiator, for example, great fun. You know, have a play with that, and then once you apply some other effects, you can kind of go wild creatively with these. Obviously, the pack, I've left them dry throughout, but yeah, you can do whatever you like with them. Check them out on bandlab.com, and also check them out. If you don't use bandlab.com, get yourself an account and download the Bandlab Assistant, which you can use in other DAWs, which is really good fun as well. So you've got access to all the kind of samples within the Bandlab library. That's it. Until next time, guys. See you later. Bye.